Thanks very much, Joe, and thanks for fitting me in at short notice. I'm the curator of the Bill Douglas Cinema Museum at the University of Exeter, which is one of the most significant collections of moving image material in Europe and is one of the partners in the Million Pictures project that Joe's running partly from Exeter. And we have over 75,000 artifacts on the history of the moving image, the long history of the moving image, if you like. And we're both a public accredited museum, we're free and open every day to everybody, but we also are a scholarly resource, and we use the collection in well over 100 classes every year. We have scholars visiting and everything else. Now, we present moving image history as a continuum from the 17th century to the present day, concentrating in particular on the audience's experience of seeing and responding to the moving image. And magic lanterns are an integral part of this story, of course. They're a medium, as you know, which brought science, art and entertainment together. They serve both mass and specialised audiences, and they developed a business model that later informed the cinema industry. And the importance of the lantern to our story is a reflection of our founding collection, which was assembled over 20, 30 years or so, from the late 50s to the beginning of the 90s, by the filmmaker Bill Douglas and his friend Peter Jewell. That's Peter on the left and Bill with some of the slides from their collection in a composite photograph that they skillfully managed to do in the garden of Peter's house in Barnstaple. This is embodied in Bill's film Comrades. Has anybody who has seen Comrades? That's right. Right. Marvellous, which uses their collection of pre-cinema artifacts to create a metaphor about new ways of seeing the world, which helps tell the story that he's telling about the Tolpot martyrs, the first trade unionists in Britain and their struggle. And this theme is achieved by the figure of the lanternist, so played here by Alex Norton as the lanternist. And Alex appears in 13 different guises throughout the film as various kinds of optical entertainment showmen, using a variety of different kinds of media, whether it's dioramas, peep shows and so on. But the lantern is given a primacy in this story. It begins, he first appears as an itinerant lanternist in this mode here, with an admittedly anachronistic, as I'm sure you'll tell me, Lapierre lantern on the back. And he is a fugitive from justice, escaping and finding common cause with the martyrs in their village. And it ends also with Alex as a different lanternist at a triumphant homecoming for the martyrs, where he is there, stood in best bib and tucker with a marvellous triurnal lantern, which sadly is not ours, on a public stage, presenting the story of the Tolpot martyrs. You can see here one of the posters used as a prop in the film for the lanternist as the fugitive, later becoming this kind of part of accepted society. And I think this reflects the popularity and the reach of the lantern. This is seen in Bill and Peter's collection. We've got amazing holdings on the panorama, optical toys, stereoscopy, all the other kinds of optical media. But the lantern was at once the most familiar and the most versatile of those media. And Sean Martin and Louise Milne made a documentary about the collection and Comrades, and they called it Lanterna Magicka, to reflect the lantern's significance to the story. And today I'm going to talk about some elements of our holdings in the museum on the magic lantern, encourage you as lantern specialists and scholars to explore them further, and I want to highlight in particular some of the artifacts that complement this event's emphasis on science and discovery. So, the majority of our lantern collection was acquired by Bill and Peter in their collecting period. We'd have around over 1,200 lantern slides, including sets. I think it may be a bit more than that now. We've got around 30 magic lanterns. We've got a number of different lectures, lantern lectures and catalogues. And it covers a variety of subjects. We've got many of the same lanterns that Frank showed actually as well, and the variety of different styles is similar. There are lanterns that create sensations or comic effects, that tell popular stories, that show the natural world, or illustrate scientific phenomena. But we've also had a few other donations in recent years, in addition to Bill and Peter's collection. So we had a set of homemade slides, a really interesting phenomenon of people creating their own Magic Lantern slides, which come from a collection put together by a vicar in Surrey. We got it from his great-grandson, where he'd been on holidays to Egypt and other exotic places and created lantern slides of the people and the places that he'd seen on his travels. We also got an impressive collection of slides, including some dissolving views and a number of life model sets that Joe's been using in his teaching, from Jeff Herden, who's a sort of Exeter advertising executive whose grandfather had been a lanternist. And very recently we got an amazing collection, the oldest slides in our collection, thanks very much to a tip-off from Philip Roberts. A lady from Yorkshire donated a set of, I think it's 27 long slides that illustrate the funeral of William, Prince of Orange in the 1750s. So showing the funeral procession in various different guises. So obviously we were very thrilled to get these, much older than the other material that we held. And that's been a sort of fascinating acquisition. And even more recently, we have gained a lot of slides and a Carpenter and Wesley projector from the old Museum of the Moving Image collection, which dispersed their collection. We've got quite a lot of pre-cinema material, including some interesting lantern slats from them too. And they show all sorts of different kinds of subjects. We've got all sorts of different kinds of slide, as has Frank. Scientific slides are probably a relatively smaller proportion of our collection than some, but there is much that's interesting and significant in there. And sometimes that's seen in the representation of knowledge. So we've got a particularly beautiful set of astronomical slides. We've been talking about them already. This is a set from W&S Jones of Holborn. I've seen a dating that goes back as far as the 1820s, but I'm sure you can tell me more accurately. But we've got a very nice collection here of these astronomical slides, some of which are presenting the solar system as a phenomenon of beauty and spectacle, but they're also showing them as a scientific system. So you see here, this one is the theory of the tides. It's a different one to the one Frank showed, but you see how that is illustrating the kind of physics and science of that phenomenon through the slides. Some later slides, we've also got these fantastic Carpenter and Wesley ones that you'll be familiar with. We've got a very nice set of those from the 1840s, slides of exotic birds and animals, which, like so many pre-cinema optical media, this is something that we emphasize across the sort of 19th century collections. They serve to bring the world to the public, make the unknown and unfamiliar knowable and part of everyday experience. Bringing the world to you, beginnings of globalization, is a really important aspect of some of this kind of material, I think. And these are also obviously amazingly beautiful. We've got some later slides that try to represent scientific progress through industrial processes. So this is a slide of the interior of the Siemens factory. I'm presuming this is early 20th century, but presumably this is something that either Siemens might use as a kind of promotional tool or is there to explain how such factory processes operate. In some other cases, science is embodied in the function of the slide themselves. So this is a rare and very beautiful kind of double pulley slide, which rather works in similar kind of Muybridge way about movement. So it mimics the effect of motion and persistence of vision through this mechanism, through this kind of rackwork mechanism, combining the opportunity of projections to an audience with some of the attributes of an optical toy. So it works in quite a similar way to a praxinoscope, for example, but is projected like a lantern slide. And I'd like to move away from the lanterns and the slides themselves now to see how the collection illuminates how they're conceived as both the embodiment and the repository of scientific knowledge. So the lantern catalogues that we hold demonstrate the range of uses and audiences for the lantern. So here's a Newton & Co. catalogue from about 1913, I think. You can see here the astronomical slides. they seem to have the potential to address both general and informed audiences. So these astronomical slides, it's emphasised that they're beautifully painted, that they move, that one of the sets is movable through rackwork, and others celebrate the tourist potential of the Greenwich Observatory on the bottom right there. And in contrast, one assumes and probably hopes that these slides of pathological tissues and radiographs of diseases of the bones were purely for specialist and professional use. I wouldn't want to see those as entertainment myself. But I particularly want to look and see how the lantern is discussed in a number of popular science books. Now, most of these are from the 19th century, but we do have Della Porta's Magna Naturalis and Kirchner's Ars Magna, the 17th century British editions that first explicate the art and science of projection. This is the second edition of Kirchner, which has the illustration in it of a projected image, which of course is wrong, it's the wrong way up, but you've got to start somewhere, this crucial, if erroneous, illustration. And we have a small but rich collection of these scientific books, which were acquired by Bill and Peter because within their discussions of physics, of chemistry and biology, there are sections on the operation of optical toys and how they can demonstrate scientific phenomena. And they're part of the way in which we understand how the lantern was an integral part of society and popular culture. And of the various optical toys that are discussed in these books, the lantern features the most, as it's the most ubiquitous of the optical media, and presumably something that any reader, whether young or old, educated or not, would recognise. The workings of the lantern and the creation of its effect are widely discussed, often within the framework of a broader look at science and learning. So here is a page from Marion's The Wonder of Optics from 1868. And you can see that the lantern is seen both in terms of its scientific function, the diagram on the left there, showing the mechanism of projection, but also as a public entertainment. So you get the image of the performance there and the projection. Now, the book is a popular science work in a way that you would still be familiar from the shelves at Waterstones today. But it's also interesting in showing the increased globalization of knowledge. It's a translation from French into English. The style is accessible. The book contains numerous illustrations, but it's for adults. It's clearly sort of not for children. And after a discussion of the workings of the eye and optical phenomena, the last third of the book, which is entitled Natural Magic, in an echo of Della Porta, shows the application of these ideas. And tellingly, the magic lantern begins the section before it broadens out to take in other optical toys and other kinds of media. The magic lantern is the way into that kind of discussion. And a slightly earlier volume also underlines this. This is Lardner's Popular Physics, dating from 1856, part of his self-proclaimed Museum of Science. It covers light, sound, and other elements, as well as specific applications such as the lantern. And the appeal to a general adult reader can be seen in the detailed and broad discussion of the functions, history, and diversity of uses of the lantern from this illustration of a phantasmagoria up here, beginning the section on the magic lantern. And also to the uses in study and entertainment. So it goes on to talk about, there's a number of pages on the kind of astronomical sliders that you can buy to illustrate knowledge, and you can purchase to project. So this is seen on this page here. So it goes into some considerable detail. I was also intrigued to see there's a section at the end on science and poetry, which is in part to show how science informs art and popular culture. But when you read it, it's really about Lardner showing the incorrect use of science in lots of poems. He seems to be very upset about the way that scientific thought is being misused in fable and poetic license. There is some humour to be gained in the attempts to disprove particular kind of poetic flights of fancy, and the very long defence that he makes of his previous denunciation of the dog and shadow illusion makes you very glad that he wasn't able to access Twitter. However, it's very interesting to see the way in which science is treated as having an ongoing relationship with popular culture. They're not trying to distinguish between science and the arts, they're showing the relationship between them. And a later volume, Marvels of Heat, Light and Sound from the 1890s, underlines this integration of science and entertainment with this illustration of dissolving views through a biurnal lantern to produce tricks and spectral illusions. And it refers in the text to their past use at the then recently closed Royal Polytechnic. And this has a long tradition, this idea of lanterns as a source of trickery. So many years earlier, in 1808, we get Gale's Recreations, so one of the earliest science books in our collection. And that features the magic lantern amongst a whole host of other tricks, illusions and diversions for its readership of sort of gentlefolk in need of occupation. So it's basically all sorts of kind of parlour entertainments to pass the time, everything from the laws of physics to sort of card sharping. And here the lantern is explained for its audience. And fascinatingly, even though this is 1808, it's already placed within a historical frame. And the text says, "This very remarkable machine, which is now known all over the world, caused great astonishment at its origin and is still beheld with pleasing admiration." So in a period sort of prior to the start of lanterns forming a organised and coherent industry, it's already seen as a media with a history and one trading on the production of a public spectacle explainable by science. So in conclusion, I want to reiterate to you as lantern scholars the diversity of our collections on the medium. A number of you, Philip and Emily, have been down southwestwards and have started to examine our collections closely, and I urge the rest of you to follow. You can find details, including many digital images, at our website. I'll show you that at the end. We see magic lanterns as a significant media in its own right that formed a part of 18th and 19th century lives, and of course early 20th century lives as well. We've got quite a bit on the cross relationship between magic lanterns and early film, seen in life model forms, seen in the way that lanterns were produced to be interspersed with film reels, up to about 1920. And as such, lantern slides form part of teaching at Exeter, from art history to English to history to sociology, as well as film and indeed science. With the astronomical slides I showed, are going to form the centrepiece of a big maths conference, big international conference in the summer. But they're more than this, though. The lanterns are vital in illuminating themes such as imperialism, globalisation, knowledge, the producer-consumer relationship, which go across all these disciplines, as well as being both informed by and informing other optical entertainments. They all interlink. And together we argue that, as Bill demonstrated in Comrades, they create new ways of seeing the world. So this is our lower gallery. We have two galleries. The lanterns are on the left. And just to show our website. Crazy mouse. Okay, so the website's here. You can browse by lantern slides here. Or you can just put lantern slides into the search term, or put in particular kinds of types of lantern, manufacturers, things like that. You can view all the lantern slides here. Quite a number have been digitised. If you click this box, all the ones with images will come up first. And you'll see various levels of description there. And of course we have a reading room where you can consult the lanterns. We have light boxes that you can look at them on. So I really hope to see you down in Exeter. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers.